do we need to do a sound check? Because now.
We'll do that in just a second. All right, good morning, everyone. I want to make sure folks who are connecting remotely can hear me. Ms. Nair, are you able to hear me?
Yes, Your Honor.
Great. Mr. Carr, can you hear me?
Yes, Judge.
Okay. Well, let me tell you why I think we're here. We'll figure out who's here in court and sort out who is online, and we'll get going. This is an interpleader matter. A relatively large one for a tax sale. We've got around $300,000 sitting in the registry of the court, and a few claimants for that, including two by the name of Steve Carr. So interesting case. And we had a late entry by a potential pro se litigant on behalf of Red Wine Property Management. We'll talk about that as well. But let me make sure we've got who is counsel for sheriff. Oh, Mr. Coleman, how are you doing today?
Great.
For those of you who made it in person, thanks for being here. There's power out at my house, so my kids are actually back in chambers. I reached out to Ms. Niles to reach out to you all to make sure it was okay to come to court. So thank you for being here. We'll work through this. And for those of you who have connected remotely, thank you for doing that. We'll come back to the Steve Carrs of the world in a minute. One of the alleged claimants is Red Wine Property Management. Is there anyone here for Red Wine? All right, who is here for Red Wine? You're Mr. Red Wine. Are you an attorney? Okay. The claimant is Red Wine Property Management Incorporated. So it's a company. Companies have to be represented by lawyers in Georgia. So you filed something pro se. You can represent yourself. And I think that there are two Mr. Carrs representing themselves. But Red Wine, if it wants to be heard, needs to be heard by an attorney. The law in Georgia is that limited liability corporations, Incs, which I think Red Wine Property is, that's a corporation, and it needs to be heard. It needs to be represented by an attorney. So I'm not asking you to leave, and I'll actually listen to you when I need to hear a little bit about Red Wine, but it may be that I cannot grant you personally relief because Red Wine Property Management, Inc. is not represented. But I just want to flag that for you. I appreciate you here, and I'll certainly listen to what you have to say. It just may not be something that I can take legal notice of. Okay?
Did I file an answer personally?
So we'll talk about that, about what you can do, and it would depend in part on who the claimant is. If the claimant is Red Wine Property Management Incorporated, then I cannot file it on their behalf. I'm not Red Wine Property Management Incorporated, although I could represent them because I'm a lawyer and thus speak for them. I'm not. No, they may ultimately be standing mute. Although, like I said, you're here, and I'll certainly want to hear what you have to say, and we'll see what we're going to do. I believe, Mr. Coleman, there will be no one from the State Department of Revenue there in default.
That's correct.
Okay. Ms. Nair, you're not here on behalf of Department of Revenue?
No, Your Honor, I'm here on behalf of the City of Atlanta.
Great. We will get to you. In fact, you're next. So there it's McNair, though. At least the form I have says McNair. On the screen, it says Nair. Which one?
It's Alicia Marie Nair. I'm not sure what form you have that says McNair, but it's Nair.
Nair it is. Great. That's what it says on the screen. And you're representing the City of Atlanta. As I understand it, there is a claim, a lien for unpaid taxes, maybe some late fees, and I'll need you to confirm the figure. The tentative figure I have is just short of $800.
If we submitted an exhibit that we're going to ask the court to take judicial notice of, that is from the tax property website, and the figure is a little more than that due to the penalties and late fees.
Let me get to, I have the exhibits all in a happy place. Let me get to that. Got it. I'm looking at a tax bill and it has a figure of 1991.
That is correct, Your Honor. However, the amount that is owed to the city is that we're claiming is $824.69 for this action.
Okay. Well, I'll let you explain how that number, I guess because this has county figures in it as well.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Got it. Well, we're going to hear from the county, I think, in just a moment, because they're next. Who's here on behalf of the county tax commissioner?
Thomas Whitley, Your Honor.
Mr. Whitley, how you doing?
Good. We made a claim for the 2017 and 2019 outstanding ad valorem taxes for the county and the city. So I believe there may be some duplication between my claim, the mayor's claim, as well as the 2019 solid waste.
Okay, well, we'll need to, if appropriate, back out of your figure, the city figure, so that Ms. Nair's.
Actually, Your Honor, we collect for the city.
Oh.
So it would actually just come to us.
Okay, we'll work through that. What I don't want to do is double count.
Yes, thank you.
Got it. So what I have for the county is $37.54.
Actually, Your Honor, it is now $4,148.60.
And it went up because of interest and penalties, or like more solid waste?
No, just interest and penalties. I mean,
Okay.
I believe our interest filed back in March.
Okay, and penalties have increased. Got it. All right, I believe, Mr. Coleman, that covers all the potential claimants other than Mr. Carr.
Yes, Your Honor. The sheriff's office just seeking reimbursement of attorney fees costs on that name.
Okay,
Other than
right.
that, I believe you're right.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the two Mr. Carrs. We're, dealing with a piece of property known as 850 Mercer Street, which is near Grant Park. Are you a Mr. Carr, sir? All right. Tell me what your connection to 850 Mercer Street is.
I would really appreciate it if you would locate the internet site, what the fellow is, and the sheriff and the police over there.
Okay, that wasn't my question though. My question is, what is your connection to 850 Mercer Street?
I've owned that property for 29 years.
Okay, what's your middle name?
Arthur,
So you are Steve A. Carr.
no, I am Stephen Arthur Carr. Name on title is Steve Carr.
And are you claiming to be the same Steve Carr who's on the title?
That's correct.
Okay, but you are Stephen A. Carr.
No, I am Steve Carr.
So what's your middle name?
Arthur,
So you are Stephen A. Carr. Yes?
I've never gone by that name.
Your first name is Stephen. We don't have to fight about this. I just want to make sure. I don't need to see your papers yet. Just work with me on this. Is your first name Stephen?
I've gone by the name Steve for 70 years.
Okay. And your middle name starts with the letter A,
That's correct.
and your last name is like Otto, but Carr with 2 R's.
That's correct.
Take a seat. Steve Carr on the screen. What is your full name?
Stephen Arthur Carr, sir.
And what do you have to show me that that's your name?
I submitted some documents via email. Let's see. Would you like for me to email more documents? Or?
Nope. Tell me what you sent.
I'm sorry?
Tell me what you sent.
I sent my social security card and a photocopy of my ID.
Okay. Tell me what your connection is to 850 Mercer Street.
I was the owner at the time of the tax sale.
Okay. Get a little deeper with me. How long do you claim to have owned 850 Mercer?
A little over 10 years, a little over 1 decade, sir.
Okay. And how did you acquire 850 Mercer?
I acquired it. I forgot their name, but it was via deed though.
That's how people do it. Did you pay for it? Was it just a quick claim to you? What did you pay to acquire 850 Mercer?
I paid for it, sir.
How much?
A little over 10 grand.
To whom?
I forgot their name, but it was a private party, sir.
A private party. Does that mean it was an individual or a company?
Oh, yes, sir, an individual.
Have you ever lived at 850 Mercer?
Yes, sir. I used it as a sort of a yard, kind of like a junkyard in a way.
Have you ever lived at 850 Mercer?
Yes, sir.
Do you live there now?
No, sir.
How long did you live at 850 Mercer?
A little over 1 decade.
So that was your primary residence for the past 10 years?
Yes, sir.
Where are you living now?
I'm actually staying with my brother in Marietta, sir.
And you gave $10,000 to someone you can't remember 10 years ago, and you believe that got you title to the property. Oh, you went away. Sorry. All right. Let's shift to the Stephen A. Carr, who is in court. Thank you. All right. Mr. Carr here in court. When did you acquire 850 Mercer?
1991,
And from whom?
Blue Circle Incorporated,
Blue Circle?
yes,
Okay.
which is a successor company to Williams Brothers, which is a successor company to Atlanta Wood Preserve.
Atlanta.
Wood Preserve,
Okay. And how much ballpark did you pay back in 91 for 850 Mercer?
40,000.
And you got a deed and you recorded the deed? Okay. And you've owned it since 1991?
Yes,
Have you lived there?
since 1991. I have homestead exemption there.
Okay. If I went there now, would your stuff be there, or because of the tax sale, no one lives there?
I live there,
So you came from 850 Mercer Street today to get here?
that's correct.
Okay. Ms. Niles, I'm having a strange, I can't open, there's a file in the, your directory that says Steve Carr ID email. And when I click on it, Now it may have opened. Now it won't let me open it. Since I don't have permission to open it. So I'm
Okay,
wondering-
I'll resend it right now.
Thank you. Well, we'll see if the other Mr. Carr comes back. If he doesn't, it will make these proceedings a lot simpler.
I wish you would find the location where he is on his computer.
Okay, I appreciate that. That's not my role.
Send the police over there.
Okay, you need to take a seat, Mr. Carr. Let me work through some of the simpler aspects of this. Ms. Nair, have you conferred with Mr. Whitley? Do you agree that, I'm asking two different questions, but whatever the amount is that is owed to the city of Atlanta, Mr. Whitley, on behalf of the tax commissioner, is saying ultimately it's the tax commissioner who collects it, and then it would be remitted to the city. Do you agree with that process, or do you think that there ought to be a separate direct payment to the city?
It can work either way. So I agree if the tax commissioner wishes to collect payment on behalf of the city, that's appropriate. Typically, we would work through this with a consent order, but I know there were some delicate situations going on with this case. And so we wanted to make sure that we appear so that we didn't forfeit our right to the amount.
Certainly. Okay. And can you give me the figure again? I thought I wrote it down. I'm going to write it on a little chart that I've got here that you think is the correct amount. It was 800 and something.
It's $824.69.
Okay.
And that is $571.88, which was the principal amount, $128.43, which was interest, and then $124.38, which were penalties and fees for
Okay.
the tax year of 2017.
This is all limited to 2017 taxes.
That is correct.
Okay. Mr. Carr, is that your understanding that there was an issue paying City of Atlanta taxes back in 2017?
How's our money?
Okay, you don't need to explain, but you're not disputing that there were some taxes and solid waste fees, et cetera, that did not get paid.
I am past the end of the street, and I should not be paying solid waste.
Okay.
So.
Different fight for you to have on a different day. You are assessed solid waste fees.
I have let them know in the past, I have not. No,
Okay. But you were routinely getting tax bills and solid waste bills, and you are acknowledging, I just want to make sure we're working through the same thing. 2017, you're saying you were out of money, so there may be some past due amounts to the city and the county. And then 2019, you may again have been out of money. I haven't heard anyone say 2018, but it sounds like we're dealing with 2017 and 2019. Are you contesting any of those amounts? Other than you don't like the solid waste fees?
I have no specificity.
Okay.
Either amount.
Well, let me ask it a different way. Do you have any proof that you paid any city or county taxes or solid waste fees in 2017 or 2019 that would offset what the county and city are trying to collect?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Whitley, is there anything more you think we need to work through for the county's portion of this situation?
No, Your Honor, we are made a claim for 2017 City of Atlanta, just to be clear, so we are asserting that claim. And I believe the 2019 tax sale, which is why we're claiming the 2019 and 2017. And I'm not sure anything is being owed 2018. Either needs, they were paid or transferred, but the county, the tax commission on behalf of the county and the city of Atlanta does not have a claim for the tax year 2018.
Okay, and I see the figure on what the tax bill that I'm looking at has for 2017, the city taxes are $571.88, which is the amount Ms. Nair mentioned, and then she has explained interest and penalties, which gets us to the $824.69. And then if I were to back that amount out of your final figure, then we'd have the amount that goes to the county.
Well, actually, there's 2019 outstanding for the city of Atlanta as well.
Okay,
If you look at, I'm sure if you look at the tax bill, this thing we provided. But again, by agreement between the tax commission collects for the city of Atlanta.
okay. So there may be yet more that will go to the city.
Correct.
But a simplified way of doing it would be to get to the tax commissioner the total amount due. Now, this bill that I'm looking at, trying to see if it has in the upper left-hand corner a date of 10/27/20. It was generated from the system, so this would be pretty darn current.
Correct.
That's 2 days ago. That has as the total figure due, a number that's different. I guess because it doesn't have solid waste.
So is it the $1,991.46?
Yes, sir, it is.
So this is the tax, this is purely the tax bill.
Okay, and then the 225732 is the solid waste.
Solid waste is $2,596.45 in the current.
Okay, can you say that figure again?
Sure, $2,596.45.
Okay,
And I'm sorry, Your Honor, the tax bill includes 2020. So if you look at it, that's the reason for the discrepancy between the numbers, is that we're not making a claim for the 2020 tax.
okay, got it. You believe that the correct solid waste figure that does not include 2020 is 2596.45.
Correct.
And what is the tax figure that does not include 2020?
So I have divided up into years, Your Honor. So this is inclusive, for 2019, I have $497.43.
That must have some, okay, yeah, interest and,
It does.
yeah, I see that figure. Okay, so that's 2019, and then there's also 2017.
2017 would be $1,054.75. Again, that would include the amount Ms. Nair is claiming.
Okay, and I see, because it has penalties, fees, interest, so I just need to sum up those two. So it's 2017 plus 2019 totals. All right, if I'm entering an order that says this is the way the money is being dispersed, in your experience, Mr. Whitley, is it cleaner to just say that total goes to the county tax commissioner, but some of it is owed to the city? Or would it be cleaner if it's in an order to say X dollars goes to the city, care of Ms. Nair, and X dollars goes to the county tax commissioner, care of you?
It would, the way we've typically done it, I believe this is the proper way, would be it's the sum total going to the tax commissioner on behalf of Fulton County and the city of Atlanta.
Okay.
So it would be to the care of my care.
What I may do is ask you to propose some language that would be part of the final order in this case and run it by Ms. Nair. And if she blesses it, then that's just how we'll word it.
Absolutely.
Ms. Nair, does that work for you? I think you're on mute. It doesn't show that you're on mute, but I couldn't hear you. No, it's odd. It's showing that we should be able to hear you. But you can give me the thumbs up if, are you good with the plan we described? Yes? Yes, excellent. That's what we're going to do. I don't want to keep you on. You're welcome to stay on the call, but I think we've sorted out the small amount of the large pool of money we have that's going to go to the county and the city. I'll ask Mr. Whitley to draft some language, run it by you, and then if you two could send an email, both of you, to Ms. Niles saying this language works for city and county. I'm comfortable with the numbers. They're documented. They're supported by materials I can take judicial notice of coming from the county record, the tax commissioner's records. And that ought to address city and county. Okay, Ms. Nair, I very much appreciate you dialing in. I'm glad you've got power at your house. I may come by with my kids afterwards for snacks, okay? All right, thanks so much. Mr. Whitley, you're free to go.
Thank you, Judge.
Mr. Redwine, I'm gonna turn to you. because I'd like to understand, even though I may not be able to give it legal weight right now, things are a little bit in flux. I will note that the other Mr. Carr has still not tried to reconnect with the call. So maybe he heard the Mr. Carr here in court saying, call the police. I don't know what it was, but he has not rejoined us. He knows how to do that if he wants to. Mr. Redwine, tell me what you think your companies, I assume you are the shareholder of or the managing person of Redwine Property Management.
There's two things here. I want to simplify a lot of stuff about using might simplify things tremendously.
Okay.
I was given notice that this court hearing is here, and I'm supposed to answer about a note that I had placed against the property. The simple thing is, last August, I wrote a check to Mr. Carr for $372,000 to pay off this thing. I wrote it personally.
Okay.
And a copy of it.
I'm gonna pause you for a second. I will give you a full hearing. Did you meet with the Steve Carr you gave the money to, or was this all electronic and telephonic?
I picked Steve Carr up and took it to Vesta Holdings, Steve goes, people that bought the pipe from the sheriff's sale.
Sure.
And I took them the check.
Okay.
I gave you a receipt of the check.
And was the Steve Carr you dealt with the gentleman seated in court?
I've known him for 25 years.
Okay. Mr. Carr, you know Mr. Redwine? Okay, so you'll be able to speak to what I'm going to hear from Mr. Redwine about.
So far, everything he has said is true.
Okay, well, I'm not assuming he's going to say something untrue. My job is made much easier that the Mr. Carr that Mr. Redwine was dealing with is the Mr. Carr here in court, who seems to be the person most directly associated with 850 Mercer. So back to you, Mr. Redwine.
I picked him up this morning at 850 at the Mercer property, and he drove with me, my driver.
This morning,
This morning.
you went to 850 Mercer, and the Steve Carr you picked up is the Mr. Carr who wants me to call Adam 12 to go get the other Steve Carr.
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to clarify one item.
I'm going to let you, but we're not going to ping pong back and forth.
I understand that. This property has 340 feet along the belt line. Northern street is Burn Street, southern street is Mercer. It is listed, originally when I bought it, it was listed as Burn, no access. Because it was and still is an industrial piece of property. I changed within the week the address to 850 Mercer, and that's what we signed on the deed, on title, and all those papers. My vehicular and pedestrian entries off of Mercer. My pedestrian entry, since I have built after 10 years, 8 years after I bought the property, is on Burn Street. So when you say, did he pick me up on Mercer? No. Did he pick me up on the Mercer property, in front of the Mercer property? The answer is yes.
Okay, I appreciate you are a man of great detail. I believe I said at as opposed to on. Really what created a little light bulb in my head was that the Steve Carr that you collected from the property that I'm going to call 850 Mercer, because that's what the property is called, was the gentleman here in court. Okay, so back to you, Mr. Redwine.
Basically, Steve informed me that the tax sale property he lost, not reimbursed or purchased something back from the people that bought it. I think it was a company called Deed Co. actually bought the property, but that is represented here in Atlanta by a company called Vesta.
They do a lot of that.
And I wrote a check out to Vesta, which is here, actually it's in Smyrna. And I took Mr. Carr with me, because sometimes you cannot buy back property if a tax sale. I can't buy back his tax sale property, he has to buy it back. But I took the check personally myself with him to Vesta, gave them the check. They accepted the check and gave him a release on the property. And they gave me a receipt for the $372,000, I think. And so I need to make a claim for the entire amount, not as the company called Redline Property Management, for me personally.
I thought maybe I'm mistaken. I thought your claim was for $82,000.
That the sheriff noticed that I have a lien against the property for $82,000.
still have that lien against the property.
And what's the basis of that lien?
He needed to pay taxes 7 years ago. He couldn't pay it, and he asked me to pay it. I gave him $60,000. Back then, I have a amortization sheet or something that can show you how that has grown to 80,000.
Okay, so you loaned Mr. Carr some money and that amount has grown because of interest, and that's the basis of your $82,000.
That's still outstanding. That is what the sheriff had this case about, is that I had a loan against the property.
Okay,
The main thing that we're dealing with is the large sum, which I paid off. So I'm claiming the entire amount on the large sum, not as my investment company, which is me personally.
okay. It may be a little more complicated than that, but we may be able to work through those complications depending on what we hear from Mr. Carr. I do want to address one thing. Well, first a question. How did you come to know Mr. Carr?
Some 25 years ago, there was state auctions of surplus equipment, and Mr. Carr was bidding on equipment. He is in the mechanical equipment business or something. I'm in the electronic business, and we butted heads against one another for about a year. And finally, after the auctions, he would say, "Do you want the electronic stuff?" "Yes, that's what I'm bidding on." If I want to bid, I asked him, "Does he want the mechanical stuff?" That's what he wanted. And I finally said, "I don't need to go to these auctions anymore. I just tell you what I want to do on forces with you." And I've been working with him for 5 years.
And has Mr. Carr lived at the 850 Mercer property pretty much as long as you've known him?
As long as I've known him.
Okay, great.
And he has stuff there that belongs to me on the property.
It sounds like there might be, some folks might say there's a lot of junk on the property. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way, but if you're buying surplus stuff, then that surplus stuff could be found in part at 850 Mercer?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Carr works on stuff. There's 2 pieces of equipment I needed over the years, which I purchased from him because he had it.
Good, it's his property. You put stuff on it. I think in your answer, you objected, Mr. Redwine, I just want to address this. You objected to Mr. Coleman being paid because you said, understandably, county has lawyers. In fact, there was one here in court. That's not.
Basically, Mr. Carr told me I need to make a response to this stuff, and I found it. I had no idea what the question. There's 9 questions there, and the 9th question, I think the answer is objection.
Okay.
I made a copy for Mr. Carr I generated a copy for him. He has a copy with him, with his name on it. And he said, "Don't put his name on it. He doesn't want to scare off the other Steve Cars." And I said, "But I don't know anything about this stuff."
Yeah.
But I had to file an answer for that. And so also I said, I will claim, at the time of the tax sale, I closed my corporation. In 2017, I sold off a lot of the property from the corporation.
Oh, wait, for your red wine property management?
And I reactivated it. And it's just easier for me to have it reactivated.
Okay.
But the corporation is in good standing right now. I'm not interested in the note. I'm not interested in claiming $80,000 against this amount. That's the corporation needs to file that. I don't have standing. I don't have a lawyer to file that with the corporation as such. But that answer was actually Steve Carr's answer, but I wanted to make sure he got his answer applied. But I had to put it in my name because he did not want his name on anything. He did not want to scare off the other Steve Carr.
Got it.
Which is, there's too many things going on here. It's just very, very simple. I just need to give you my answer. There's,
Okay.
some money. I'd like to make a claim.
All right. Mr. Carr, thank you for sharing that. Mr. Carr, I don't know how well you could see the gentleman who was on the screen when he was briefly there. Did you recognize that face? Is that someone you've ever seen before?
There may have been 1 or 2 people that look similar to him that I may have met in the past, but I doubt it.
Okay.
And anybody that I have met, I feel comfortable with, wanting to do business with, because I don't socialize at that property. Unless I get lucky and have a neighborhood girlfriend.
When you say you don't socialize there, do you own other properties as well?
Yes,
But where you lay your head most nights is at 850 Mercer?
Exactly.
Okay, but you are a real estate investor, maybe like Mr. Redwine, and you have other properties.
De facto investor.
What does that mean?
That means that 1991, I acquired 2 pieces of property on the belt line, this is before the belt line. I'm assuming you're familiar with the Atlanta belt line.
I'm familiar with the Atlanta Belt. I probably run by your house, not knowing it was your house. I might have said, look at all the junk in that yard.
I have no house, I have an industrial building.
All right. So,
Half of that industrial building was on CSX property,
okay,
which was not part of the right of way. It's between my property and the right of way. So I own a double lot, which I was planning to have for my retirement home. And that other lot, which formerly was owned M2, heavy manufacturing. In 1981, citywide proactive rezoning changed it to R4. The other lot is R4, no problem. In 2001, I acquired an assemblage of 3 properties in the tax allocation district, very close to the belt line, in that southeast Atlanta part of town. And I thought it was going to be sold about 3 years ago. It didn't sell. Got a very nice offer for it. The offer's still on the table, but there's a couple of what the belt line calls a deal breaker. Belt line wants, they've also given me an offer.
it'd help you pay your taxes if you sold it.
Unfortunately, there's some other items that it'll cost you dear, and I'll go through the details.
No, let me ask this. This is sort of the, I think, overarching question we need to work through. Do you agree that Mr. Redwine, whether it's Mr. Redwine personally or Redwine Property Management, that really doesn't matter for purposes of the question I'm asking you. Do you agree that he or it, the company, has a claim to this pool of funds?
Absolutely.
Okay,
And more than a claim, Carl needs to get the whole amount, every bit of it. This whole thing is, as I'm going to assume that you understand, is a scam. My tax liability was less than $10,000. It got bid up to over $300,000. Why? It's such a valuable piece of property. 340 feet of frontage on the belt line.
it is a valuable piece of property.
I've gotten unsolicited offers for it, of course. Thank you very much. In the meantime, I got lots of dirt. But I don't have much cash.
Right. You are agreeing with the validity of Mr. Redwine's claim to the excess funds.
Absolutely, 100%. It's
So that would mean you get none of the excess funds.
not my money.
That's what Mr. Redwine says. I just want to make sure.
It never has been my money. It's a scam for Deco to get $60,000 in interest. Off
Okay.
of that 300,000 they bid at 20%.
So I think what we can do, Mr. Coleman, is actually do a consent order that would address a lot of this. I think it would address all of it. What I will do for you, Mr. Carr, is share what the other Mr. Carr submitted as his supposed identification and connection to 850 Mercer. I understand why you're anxious to pursue something about that. And you will have access to all the court records in connection with this case if there's something you want to pursue. I'm not law enforcement. I don't take a side one way or the other. Certainly is a suspicious situation. I better understand now your frustration with the situation. But you hopefully understand that we need to take all comers, and until I actually interact with folks, it's not appropriate for a judge to say, well, you sound more earnest, so you must be the one that I need to do business with. I needed to give the other Mr. Carr an opportunity, whatever his name is, to appear, and you saw how long he was here, and we'll see
All
what
I was
happens.
asking was for you to freeze his location.
Well, I told you what I'm going to do, which is to share what he provided in terms of his identification, and you can pursue that as you see fit.
John Coleman did share that with me, shared emails with me.
Okay, so you've got it already.
Yes.
Great.
I went to the Atlanta police and made a police report. And which Charles has, which John Coleman has just recently seen, I thought he had done it before.
Okay.
And it's not so much about this particular individual. That forgery was very well done. And for the whole thing to get orchestrated, that tells me is that there was more than one person involved.
Likely.
Now, if they did it to me, what they should have done is come by the property
Yep.
instead of zooming in on a GIS.
Yep.
And for whatever excuse, met me, find out the lay of the land, but they didn't do that. Now,
Understood.
I'm not upset about the guy. I'm upset about two things. One is how we got here. This whole thing is a legal sham. I got to pay $60,000 for interest that Charles picked up for me to deed code. I've got to pay Charles now until I can sell that other property, which I've been offered a substantial amount of money for. And I'm going to end up paying him about $20,000 on a $372,000 check that he wrote to Vesta Holdings or deed code. I'm going to end up spending $80,000 plus on a tax liability of less than $10,000, $9,700.
Well, one moral of the story would be don't fall behind on your taxes, and then none of this would happen.
That's a punitive thing. Ken Jackson knows who I am. He could have called me and said, Steve, this is coming up, and there is fraught with problems, and let's work this out. Let's put a lien on the property. I want to develop it.
So, Mr. Carr, even though it is a sheriff's sale, I assure you that Sheriff Jackson, and it'll be the same for Sheriff Labatt when he starts in January, they do not look at the tax sale, the dozens of tax sales all the time. It's in the sheriff's name, but he would have not known that it was your property.
He knows my name. He knows me. They both met me.
That's great, but he would have not known that the sale was occurring. This is not how it works. But I'm happy that we have a resolution that is going to make the right folks who are making claims now whole. We have discovered that there was this inappropriate situation going on with the other gentleman. I don't know what's behind that. A mystery, hopefully to be solved by someone. Mr. Coleman, I'm going to ask that you prepare a draft order that would have your fees paid, the proper amount going to city and county, but we'll get that nugget from Mr. Whitley, and you can fit that in. And the remainder of the funds would go to, we need to work out, I think it's cleaner if you file the answer as Redwine Property Management Inc., that's where the money goes. But if you prefer that it be Charles D. Redwine, I'm signing the order, so it can say what it's going to say. Do you have a preference?
Charles, D. Redline, I have a deposit fee here, or a reference to my bank, where it's direct to the bank.
No, the way the clerk's office gets involved, the clerk is the custodian of the money now, and so it's the clerk's office that disperses it. And I don't believe they do any electronic transfers. They will mail a check, or they will let you come pick a check up. In these COVID days, they prefer to mail the check. But if you want to pick it up, you need to let Mr. Coleman know that, so that the order I sign says that the money should be delivered only to Charles D. Redwine in person. Query whether you want that to happen, given what's floating around here. You may want it mailed to you so that it gets to you and someone pretending to be you doesn't show up. But let me do one other thing.